When I turned 18 and I was admitted into college, I sat down with my father to have a conversation about what I was going to study and get some of his advice. And my dad said he would support me if I studied one of the three careers that he thought would be good for me. I could be a lawyer, I could be an engineer, or I could be a doctor. I didn't want to be any of those three. I wanted to be an actor. When I told my father this, he said actor meant starvation. Halfway through my acting major, I realized I didn't like being an actor, and I changed majors and studied English. Today, I look back at that adventure, talking with my father, choosing a major, deciding what I was going to do, as really a moment when I got to know myself, and I got to choose for myself, and I got to decide for myself how I was going to live my life. I didn't have to fall under the pressure of being who my father wanted me to be. I could discover my own path, and I could be successful at it. Our guest today brings us a question about paths, about how to follow a path, which path to follow, and the expectations and the pressures of the path. I'm really excited to have this conversation with Devon. I'm Mauricio Bruce, and this is The Real Question. Hi, Devon.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here.
So, if you've been listening, you know that I'm trying a new question out at the beginning of the episode, which is no longer a surprise question, but it's just if you could tell me anything about yourself, what would you want to tell me?
I really, like many others, really enjoyed traveling and try to see as much of the world as I can and really get my energy from that, from experiencing different places and people and food.
So 2 questions. Where was the last place you traveled to?
The last place that I traveled to was just the last week. I was in Miami for a friend's trip, which was nice. It was nice to escape the Midwest winter. And then upcoming travel, I'm planning a trip to Iceland in the spring that I'm really excited for. Yeah.
Yes, I love Iceland. Iceland is beautiful and very cold.
I'll have to get your recommendations, perhaps. Yeah, that would be nice. I'm excited.
So, Devon, you've come to the show, and I'm really curious. What's the question you're bringing us?
Yes. So my question is, should I start making more concrete long-term plans? And I've kind of been thinking about those in 3 different buckets. And the reason why this question kind of came about was I tried to purchase concert tickets for a concert in the summer. And I couldn't do it because I was like, this feels so far away. I can't possibly make a commitment for August in February. That's crazy. And it's really not. I've made farther out commitments before. But so there's the short-term commitments like that. There's the longer-term plans like, should I start taking dating more seriously or thinking about buying a house? Like these plans that feel very rooted. And then even farther, this very scary bucket of, should I start thinking about like what retirement is going to look like and really thinking about future Devon? And that part gets a little bit scary for me because of how the world looks. But yeah, so should I start kind of settling down more, developing some more roots is kind of what I'm thinking about.
So what a beautiful and interesting and multifaceted question, because I heard a lot of should I's there, right? Like there's not just...
Yeah, maybe too many.
Well, let's work with them, because you started by saying, should I start making more concrete long-term plans? And then you talked about the concert, and then you talked about dating, and then you talked about settling roots, and then you talked about retirement. What's the theme of those, you think?
If you're going to ask my therapist, I think there's a little bit of fear in those. They all feel kind of scary to me. Maybe not at the concert so much. That sounds fun. But at least those other two buckets feel very scary to me.
Okay, but even with the concert, you said, oh, I can't commit to something, quote, that far away, even though, I don't know, it's 6 months away?
Right. There is the implication that I will be here. I will be in my town where I live. I won't be moved away. That's like the implication. I will be here to see the concert in 6 months.
Right. When you just said the theme is fear, according to your therapist, let's do this fill in the blank. I'm afraid of.
I'm going to miss something else.
Yeah. Okay. I'm afraid that if I make a choice, then there's something that I'm not choosing that I'm going to miss out on.
Yeah. That feels accurate.
Okay. So I can see that for the concert, right? If I choose and I buy these tickets for this concert and then a better plan shows up during the summer and I'm already committed and I've spent the money for this concert, then I can't, go on another friend trip to Miami.
Right.
Now, walk me through that fear, for example, if I take dating more seriously.
I think in terms of dating specifically, it's not so much of like, oh, if I start dating someone, would someone else better come along? I love being by myself. So it's like, would I miss that if I take dating more seriously? Like, would I miss having my space to myself? Or, and that's like maybe thinking too far down the road. But so it's less about would something better come along or would I miss what I already have?
Yeah. So it sounds to me like underneath your question of should I start making more concrete long-term plans? Should I start settling down? You said there's another one of there's all these expectations of how I should live my life. Should I live my life that way? And what happens if I don't?
Yeah, that feels like a constant battle of what I've grown up thinking is like the quote unquote right thing to do. And the expectations of, society or my parents or even now myself. I've started to become more comfortable with that idea of, well, maybe my life doesn't need to look like what I thought it needed to look like when I was 18. It can look totally different.
So as you were growing up, you had a certain vision of what it had to be like, what it meant to be an adult, have a family, have a home, have a partner, have a job, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And it seems like that's looming over you. And the fear is, fill in the blank.
That I'm failing at that, or that I guess a fear of misalignment. It might not be a bad thing, but there's still a guilt. Like I'm letting down my younger self. I'm not meeting her expectations.
So there's two fears that I feel there that I want to just explore with you. One is I'm afraid of just being different, of not fitting into the societal expectation of what life should be like, not living according to that mold that younger Devon had received from her parents and had sort of accepted and hoped for. And there's another one that has to do with I'm afraid that I'll go in that direction and I just won't do it right. And I want to know which one of those feels scarier, feels realer.
I think when you talked about the former, I think that that is a little bit of I would describe that fear as almost like a nagging in the back of my head fear. Oh, and not only that, it is present. I mean, I had not just from my family, but just in the last few years, 6 of my close friends all got married the same year and then all had babies 2 years after that. So that was like right in my face. We're all doing this and you cannot, for whatever reason, figure that part out, which I think then kind of leads into the second fear that you mentioned of if I do follow this path, then it might not be right. And I guess both of those fears, kind of what you described, hit home. The first one feels like it's slightly out of my control. Like this is the world, and maybe like I can't always control that. The second one feels like something that I can control. I can go down these paths, and then it feels like there's something wrong with me when I'm going down the path. And then it's like, I can control this. I can be intentional about this, but it's still wrong, or I'm still failing at it, or that. So I would say maybe the second one is a little bit more like, it feels a little sharper than the first.
Yeah. I'm going to explore that, but I'm just curious. Have you ever imagined, if I don't go down that path, which one you would go down?
Yeah, I when I think about like what my middle age looks like, it is I picture myself being so much more flexible than I think that the path that younger Devon was expecting feels so rigid to me now. And when I picture my life, I just picture something a lot more flexible where I can be, oh, it sounds great to go to Iceland next month. Let's book a trip. You know, there's that like kind of flexibility. And I covet that so much. I love that flexibility about my life. And even the word, you know, we're talking about concrete plans, like thinking about the element of concrete itself, famously unflexible. Like, so I do think that when I picture my life, it is, I don't know, just a little bit more flexible and free, and maybe not on that same path, and feeling okay with that. I'd like that. That would be great to not have that nagging.
Yeah. It sounds like there's these two paths, the traditional and sort of limiting path and the flexible, free path that Devon has imagined. And it also feels like there's this pressure that if I don't follow the traditional path that my friends have followed and that young Devon used to think was going to be her path, then I'm afraid I might not be enough. I might not be right. I might not be fill in the blank.
Yeah. Not being enough feels accurate. And it is a feeling of, why can't I figure that path out? Why is that path so difficult for me to achieve, for me to succeed at? And I think maybe that is where I'm thinking the term failure comes in, is like, I cannot win on this path. Feels very hard. And despite trying that path, or not really, that's unfair to say, thinking about that path. Because I, in all fairness, I have not really tried. And I for the last 10 years, I very much have been thinking about, everything feels very temporary to me until I move home, which I did like 4 or 5 months ago now. So I have not given that path a fair shot of, I think I've thought about it a lot, but maybe I have not tried it as much because, oh, well, this is just temporary right now. I'm just having fun. I'm just being flexible, being free, kind of living that other path that we've talked about.
I'm being flexible. I'm being free. And I'm really scared that if I try that other path, I'm going to fail. I'm not going to do it well. And therefore, I'm sort of going to be a failure as an adult, as a person, as a member of society.
Yes.
So I'm curious, you just mentioned that you recently came home.
Yes.
So you came home from?
So I came home from what some of my friends have dubbed a side quest, where I lived for a year in Florida. And before that, I was living in Chicago for almost 10 years, and then lived in Charlotte, North Carolina before that. So I really have hopped around the last 12 or so years.
I'm going to take your friend's terminology of side quests. So in adventure stories, The heroes do side quests because they're gain tools and magic spells and weapons to complete the main quest.
Ooh, I like this. I like
Right?
this metaphor. Yep, that's true. Yeah.
And now you've come home, and suddenly the pressure to start the main quest looms over you.
Very looming. Yes. Yes.
And like any good hero, there's still a bit of fear. The best heroes recognize that what I'm about to go do still has its dangers and its threats. But then what shows up for me is, because I'm so afraid that I won't be enough, because I'm so afraid that I won't be able to complete the main quest, I'm just holding myself from it. And then I'm sort of fulfilling this self-told prophecy.
Yeah. I have been holding myself back from stepping forward on the quest. And moving back home was that big step. I'm starting the quest. And even that was kind of a shove, you know?
Yeah. And listen, I'm not here to tell you that this is the right path and that everyone has to follow that path. I'm not trying to make that argument at all. I'm just trying to make sure that we see sort of this hesitant part of Devon of taking that next step because of the fear that that step is just going to confirm this fear that I have about myself.
Yeah, that is the hesitancy. I don't want to take that step and then be met with, oh, actually, you are unlovable.
You didn't complete enough side quests.
Right. You didn't gather enough potions or skills.
That's right. You needed some more experience points. And so if I look back at the question you came to ask today, where you said, should I start making more concrete long-term plans? In a way, it's, should I start this big adventure?
Yes. Yeah. This next chapter, if we're sticking with like the main plot or the main story. Yeah.
But if we bring it back to your life, what would you call it, this next chapter? Is it adulthood? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be adulthood. I don't want to discredit the last several years of my life of being adulthood, but I guess this chapter being a more rooted chapter or a more just like, this is maybe not a good chapter title, but like just to be comfortable in my decisions and to be a little bit more of a sure of myself chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that. I don't want to discredit the last couple of years, the side quests, because they are already part of your adventure, right? You could see them as, I was just using up some of my time elsewhere. But if we don't see it as that, and we see it that as already part of your adulthood, we could say, you've already been on this journey for a number of years. You've been getting to know Devon. You've been getting skills. You learned, I can make a community. I can save money. I can live on my own.
And I think that not only gaining the skills, and maybe why this question feels so heavy on my mind right now, but I feel like I've also learned like what I value has become a little bit clearer on those quests and what is actually important. Like the reason I ended up in Florida is because I felt like I had my foot on the gas so hard that I got burnt out to the point where I'm like, I should move to Florida and work in a bar for a year. So getting to that, thinking professionally, that point of burnout, I learned like I value financial stability, but I maybe don't need to have the office with the window and the salary. That's not as valuable to me as being flexible or being
flexible and being free.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're kind of understanding what's underneath your question. All the pressure, all the expectations, all the perceptions of the way things have to be. And then we have these values that you've just named that are really important for you, flexibility and freedom. And there's a fear in Devon that if I take on, I'm just going to keep using the metaphor, the main quest, I'm going to lose my flexibility and my freedom.
Yeah, that the main quest as laid out by society that we talked about earlier seems to be in conflict with the values that I've uncovered the last few years.
Let me ask you something. Do you think there are people out there, other people like you, who have the same values of freedom and flexibility and also want to take on the main quest? Or do you think you're alone?
No, I certainly think that there's other people who want this or value flexibility, freedom, and they do it. And I'm sure they do it well. I definitely don't think that I'm the only person who feels this way.
So it seems really interesting to me that your journey brought you back to Ohio, where it seems you live in a community of people who have taken on a path that is traditional. And it's there within that traditional community that you've chosen to say, okay, now I have to start. I have to do this, and I have to sort of do it the traditional way. Meanwhile, in other parts of your life and in other quests, you've met people who might not be as traditional.
Yeah.
Can I ask what pulled you away from them?
What pulled me away, we kind of touched a little bit what pulled me away from Chicago, and that community feels like more aligned with that. Like I've seen people have those same values and live a life that seems more aligned with at least like what I want now. I think just had a moment there of like, I need to like get away from that. Was like, yeah, I had a little bit of a freak out, and that's what brought me to Florida. And, what brought me away from Florida was there was a moment where I said to myself, well, why don't I just, if I don't have these things that are tying me, if I'm like untethered, why don't I just like move to Scotland or, whatever it could be. And one of my good friends said to me, well, you don't have a support system there. And I didn't feel like I had a support system in Florida. I had a community that I liked hanging out with. And I had two very good friends there that I would say were my support system. And as I was thinking and going back and forth of, I'm thinking about moving, I don't know what I should do, they both said, well, we're moving. We're leaving Florida. So that kind of was a nail in the coffin for me of like, well, if the two people who support me here are moving, I'm untethered here. But I do have a support system in Ohio.
What was really interesting for me there, Devon, is you said when your two friends left or said they were leaving, you felt untethered. And that was too much. You needed to find someplace that was a little bit more grounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's freedom and there's flexibility, but there's also a little bit of grounding that's important to you.
And I think that's where that idea of being a little bit more rooted in this next chapter comes from, is as much as I do value those things, and sometimes I worry that the flexibility and, I'm free to do this and to go wherever I want kind of spirals into I'm going to use the phrase running away, but that's not the correct phrase, but because I don't think I'm hopefully not running away from anything, but I do want a little bit more of a tether. I don't want to feel like I'm just like floating in nothingness, which is where there's a flexibility and freedom, and there's the floating in nothingness. And sometimes that gets a little bit too close. That line conflates a little bit for me.
So let's just start talking to sort of bring this conversation to land it. Start talking about some steps for you to start exploring that rootedness and that sort of groundedness, but also not having to say, I commit fully to this path that makes me feel trapped.
I think that this conversation has helped me see that the first bucket is a little less scary.
What was the first bucket? The concert?
Concert tickets. Yeah. I think I can buy concert tickets for September and be okay.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think that's really interesting. Like being able to commit to a concert in August and say, you know what? I love this idea. I want to go to that concert. I will buy the tickets. That is a little bit of rootedness. It's being able to say, I'm going to commit.
Yeah. I have plans to be here in 6 months. That feels like a step I can take. I know I'm not going to move before the fall because that's when my lease, I know I have at least the term of my lease to make commitments here.
Can I get you to say that differently?
Yeah.
Can I say, I commit to being here in August?
Yes, I commit to being here in August.
Because when you say, I know I'm going to be here in August, or it's still sort of left floating there. Do you see that? I just want you to land it.
Okay. I can make the commitment to be here in August. I can make plans that at least go through my lease. And that feels comfortable for me.
When does your lease end?
October.
Okay. So those are still sort of like concert plans, and what happens in October?
I guess in October, there's a little bit of an evaluation of, was this the right, and it might be a little bit before October, just logistically, but this is an evaluation of, was this the right move? I've had a rule for myself that when I move somewhere new, I give it a year. I do an evaluation at a year where I say, okay, you've been here a year. There's no impulsive decisions to be made prior to this about moving. And at a year, you can kind of decide if this is a right fit.
Can I push you from, instead of thinking about location, to thinking about Devon, rather than thinking, oh, I've been here for a year, is this good? To think about what Devon wants, what Devon is feeling, the way Devon is learning to be rooted, to create community. And it's not about the physical location. It's more about an emotional and maybe even spiritual location within Devon.
Oh, I love that. I think that reframe is really helpful. I love what you said, too, about how I'm learning and what I'm learning. That means a lot.
If we keep waiting for the location to satisfy my needs, then there's always going to be something geographically. Oh, I just need to be closer to the ocean. Oh, no, I'm missing the mountains. Oh, I need it to be colder. Oh, more urban or more rural, or etc. This quest is less about the journey outside and more about the journey inside.
Yeah.
Just sort of to come right around, and I've already been there, but you like travel and you like to see the world, and you've been framing it. You started the frame by saying, I like seeing new places and seeing new cultures. I'm going to encourage you to see new parts of Devon and new thoughts that Devon can have. And how am I feeling regarding my own position in my life, my goals, what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, what I'm believing, what I'm thinking?
That really resonates. I'm not really sure what to say, but I think that reframe is a really helpful way to think about it that gets a little bit to the root of it more so than how I've been looking at things during my annual check-ins.
You could even start a notebook where you say, 2025, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling. And you could carry that with you wherever you go. And therefore, the check-ins become inside and not, oh, do I like Ohio, or do I like Florida, or do I like Scotland?
I really do appreciate that. Reframe is really, really helpful, actually. I think having a little bit more consistency, too, because the yearly check-in feels so big, but a little bit more frequency, that's, make it part of your ritual, part of your day. That's so nice.
Yeah. Well, you and I can check in again in like 2 months.
Okay.
And see where we're at.
Perfect. Hopefully concert tickets in hand. Contributing to my 401k.
Thank you so much, Devon. Thank you for being here and being willing to be so vulnerable about all of this.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time and helping me think from a different perspective.
This has been The Real Question. Our show is funded through our Patreon at patreon.com/realquestionpod. If you're a regular listener, we would love your support. There are so many fun perks at Patreon. Come check them out. Another way you can support this show is by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. I've seen a few reviews come up in the last couple of weeks. I really enjoy reading them. Please leave us a review. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Real Question Pod. We are always looking for more guests. Go to our website, realquestionpod.com, and submit to our form. I would love to see what your questions are, and I would love to have conversations with you right here on the show. We love to shout out our BFF tier patrons, Renee Underhill, Becky Boo, Jenny Cruz, and Amanda Schramm. We are a Not Sorry production. Our executive producer is Vanessa Zoltan. We are edited and produced by Ariana Nettleman. Music is by Nick Bowl, and we are distributed by Acast. Support for this show comes from the Fetzer Institute. Thank you, Devon, for joining us today. Thank you for sharing about her really important and really real question. I hope that the side quest of coming on the show has granted her the necessary experience points to move on. And thank you, as always, to our wonderful team, Julia Argy, Nikki Zoltan, AJ Yaramas, Anissa Ahmed, Danny Langley, Courtney Brown, Casper Turkile, and Stephanie Paulsell. We'll see you all next week for another guest, another question, and another conversation. Till then.